Let us step softly into the year 1200, where the sun dips low over the vast grasslands of West Africa, painting the Sahel in hues of amber and violet. The air carries the faint scent of distant campfires and the earthy aroma of red soil, while the wind whispers stories of kingdoms that once were. For centuries, the kingdom of Ouagadougou, known to strangers as Ghana, had stood as the unrivaled master of this land, its name synonymous with wealth and power. But now, that name hangs heavy with the weight of decline, like a fruit overripe and ready to fall. Ouagadou's greatness had never come from mining gold or digging salt, though both flowed through its markets like rivers. Its genius lay in balance, standing as the wise middleman between the Sahara's salt caravans and the forest's gold traders, taxing just enough to thrive without stifling the flow of goods. In Kumbi Sala, its capital, two cities coexisted like two sides of a coin, one a bustling hub of Muslim merchants, their stalls overflowing with silks and spices, the other a walled fortress where the king held court, surrounded by soldiers and storytellers who wove tales of his glory. Arab travelers wrote of dogs in silver collars and horses draped in gold cloth, of a king so wealthy he could fund wars with a single chest of treasure. But even the cleverest balance can be shattered. By 1200, Ouagadou's light is dimming, snuffed out by a storm of troubles. From the north came the Almoravids, religious warriors from Morocco who swept down like a sandstorm, not just conquering but disrupting the delicate harmony that made the kingdom work. They frowned on the king's traditional rituals, clashed with Muslim merchants over faith, and turned neighbors against one another. Then came the drought, years of parched fields and dried-up wells, turning green pastures into dust bowls. Farmers fled, herders fought over shrinking grazing lands, and the caravans that once trundled through Ouagadou's markets grew scarce. The king's tax collectors returned with empty hands, and provincial chiefs, once loyal, began to wonder if they might fare better on their own. As Ouagadou fades, the Sahel becomes a chessboard where new players jostle for power. To the west, in the Senegal River Valley, the kingdom of Takra rises, its rulers quick to embrace Islam and forge ties with North African traders, their banners fluttering with the confidence of those who sense an opportunity. To the east, along the Niger River, the city-states of the Songhai people stir, their canoes gliding silently through the waterways, building networks that bypass old Ouagadou entirely. They know the river is a highway, and they mean to own it. But the most fearsome challenger emerges from the south, the Soso kingdom, led by a man whose name sends shivers through villages, Sumanguru. Unlike Ouagadou's kings, who ruled with patience, Sumanguru believes in iron and fear. His blacksmiths forge swords that can cut through leather and bone, and his warriors ride into battle with the fury of a summer storm. He burns villages that resist, seizes gold mines, and laughs at the old ways of diplomacy. Power is taken, not traded, he tells his generals, and his army grows with every conquest. In the midst of this chaos, there is a small kingdom you might miss on any map, Kangaba, home to the Mandinka people. Nestled between the Niger and the forests, it is no match for Sumanguru's armies or Takra's wealth. Its villages are clusters of mud huts with thatched roofs, where farmers tend millet fields and blacksmiths work under the shade of baobab trees. But the Mandinka have something even the Soso cannot forge, a web of traditions that hold them together. Their storytellers, called griots, sing of ancestors who turned adversity into strength. Their clans share food in lean times, and their women, merchants, healers, advisors, hold more power than most in the Sahel. They have watched Ouagadou fall, and they know survival requires more than swords. Let me ask you this, as the fire crackles low, what makes a kingdom rise when others fall? Is it gold, or swords, or something quieter? The Mandinka would say it is balance, the same wisdom that once made Wagadu great, but with a heart that beats closer to the land. They have no grand palaces, no armies of thousands, but they have learned to adapt. When drought comes, they dig deeper wells. When raiders come, they hide their grain in secret pits. When strangers come with new ideas, they listen, whether it is a merchant's tale of distant markets or a scholar's words from the Quran. By 1200, the Mandinka are not yet conquerors. They are survivors, huddled close as the storm of change sweeps across the Sahel. But in their villages, in the stories the griots sing, in the quiet resilience of their daily lives, there is a spark. It will take a leader to fan it into flame, a leader born not to a throne, but to a struggle. A leader who knows what it means to be broken, and to rise again. For now, though, the night is calm. The crickets chirp, the Niger murmurs in the distance, and somewhere, a griot begins a song. When the old tree falls, the young shoot finds sunlight. Let us wander deeper into the world of the Mandinka, where the Niger River bends like a silver ribbon through the grasslands. It is the early 13th century, and the sun rises over Kangaba's villages, painting the mud walls of huts in warm tones. Smoke curls from cooking fires, and the air smells of millet porridge and wood smoke. Here, life moves to the rhythm of the seasons, not with the clash of swords, but with the rustle of grain, the clink of tools, and the songs of griots under baobab trees. This is a society built not on conquest, but on connection, a web of roles and traditions that turns a collection of families into something stronger, a people. To understand the Mandinka, you must first see their clans, like threads woven into a cloth. Each clan has its purpose. The farmers tend to the fields, their hands calloused from planting millet and sorghum, knowing that a good harvest means everyone eats. The herders guide cattle across the savannah, their songs keeping the animals calm, their knowledge of water holes saving lives in drought. The merchants, with their caravans of donkeys, trek to distant markets, trading cloth and metal for salt and spices, bringing back not just goods, but stories of the world beyond Kangaba. Then there are the Nyamakala, the artisan castes, who hold the kingdom's secrets. Blacksmiths work under the shade of trees, their forges glowing like small suns as they shape iron into tools, spears, and symbols of power. Iron is the bone of the earth, they say, and their work binds the community, plows for farmers, weapons for defenders, bracelets for brides. Leatherworkers tan hides into water bags and shields, stitching them with patterns that tell stories. Musicians, too, are Nyamakala, but their instruments are more than tools, they are voices of the ancestors. But no Nyamakala is more vital than the griots. Imagine an old man with a kora, its strings plucked to mimic the wind, as he sits at the center of a village gathering. His voice rises and falls, weaving tales of kings who lived 100 years ago, of battles won not with swords but with wit, of a time when the Mandinka first settled these lands. We are the memory of the people, a griot might tell you. When a king dies, his crown passes to his son. When a griot dies, a library burns. They are historians, diplomats, and teachers, settling disputes with a well-timed story, reminding everyone of their shared past. A village without a griot is like a body without a heart, alive, but not whole. Even women, often unseen in the histories of empires, hold the Mandinka world together. They plant and harvest alongside men, but also tend to the women's fields, where they grow crops to feed their children and sell at market, keeping a little money for themselves. A merchant's wife might manage caravans while her husband is away, negotiating with traders in 5 languages. A queen mother advises the king in private, her wisdom shaped by years of listening to the village's needs. A kingdom is like a calabash, one proverb goes. The man holds it, but the woman knows how to keep it from breaking. Religion, too, is a thread in this cloth. The Mandinka honor the spirits of the land, the river, the baobab, the ancestors who walk beside them. They make offerings of millet beer to the earth before planting, and thank the sky when rain comes. When Muslim merchants arrive, they do not turn away. Instead, they listen. Some adopt parts of Islam, the prayers, the idea of one God, blending them with their own traditions. A farmer might pray to Allah for rain and leave a bowl of porridge for the river spirit. All paths lead to the same mountain, a griot sings, and the Mandinka nod, for they know survival means making room for different truths. Now, let us meet a boy who would test this resilience. His name is Sundiata, son of King Nair Maghan Konate of Kangaba. But he is no ordinary prince. Born with a twisted leg, he cannot walk like other children. Instead, he crawls, his hands scraping the dirt, while other boys run and play. Villagers whisper, "Is this the one who will lead us?" Some laugh, others pity him. His father's chiefs wonder if he is cursed. Even his stepmother, Sagalan Keju, though she loves him, fears he will never be a warrior. Yet Sundiata is not broken. He listens, oh, how he listens. While other children chase goats, he sits with the griots, absorbing stories of Mandinka heroes who overcame weakness. Remember the ant, one tells him. It is small, but it moves mountains, grain by grain. He watches the blacksmiths, noting how they heat iron to bend it, not break it. He helps his mother tend her garden, learning which plants heal, which ones poison, which ones grow in the worst soil. The earth does not reject the seed that tries to grow, she tells him. When his father dies, chaos comes to Kangaba. Sundiata's stepbrother, Dankaran Two-Man, takes the throne, but he is weak, and Sumanguru's Soso armies circle closer. One day, Sumanguru visits Kangaba, his eyes sharp as he looks at Sundiata crawling in the dirt. "This is your prince," he mocks. "A king who cannot stand will kneel to me soon enough." The words sting, but Sundiata says nothing. He just watches Sumanguru's soldiers, their swords, their horses, storing the image away. Not long after, Dankaran Two-Man, fearing Sumanguru, sends Sundiata and his mother into exile. They wander for years, from kingdom to kingdom, sleeping under trees, begging for food. But exile is a teacher. Sundiata meets merchants who teach him about trade, warriors who show him how to use a bow, even a healer who massages his leg, easing the pain. Slowly, he grows strong. One day, in a village far from Kangaba, he stands. Shaky at first, then steady. The children who once laughed now stare in wonder. Why did the Mandinka survive when others fell, you might ask, as the fire dies down? It is not because they were the strongest or the richest. It is because they built a world where everyone has a place, where a farmer's grain, a blacksmith's iron, a woman's wisdom, a griot's song, and even a crippled boy's resilience all matter. They knew that a kingdom is not a castle of stone, but a net woven from many threads. And when one thread frays, the others hold it fast. Sundiata, now a young man with a steady gaze, looks back toward Kangaba. He has learned the Mandinka secret: strength is not in never falling, but in rising, together. The sun hangs low over the Sahel, but its warmth offers little comfort. By the 1220s, a chill has settled over West Africa, not from the wind, but from the name on everyone's lips, Sumanguru. The king of the Soso has turned his kingdom into a machine of war, and its gears grind relentlessly, crushing anyone who stands in its way. From his capital in Kaniaga, Sumanguru's influence spreads like a desert sandstorm, blotting out the light of smaller kingdoms. This is no mere expansion, it is a reign of fear, and the Mandinka people of Kangaba are about to feel its full force. To understand Sumanguru's power, you must picture his army. It is not like the loose bands of warriors that once roamed the Sahel. His soldiers are disciplined, their ranks filled with men who have known nothing but war. Blacksmiths work day and night in forges, hammering iron into swords and spears that gleam like liquid darkness. A sword sharp enough to split a hair, Sumanguru boasts, is worth 1,000 prayers. His cavalry ride sleek horses imported from the north, their hooves thundering as they charge, leaving villages in flames. When his army approaches, people flee into the bush, hiding in caves or among the tall grasses, their hearts pounding at the sound of distant trumpets. Sumanguru rules through fear, but he is no mere brute. He understands power, how to use it, how to display it. When he conquers a kingdom, he does not just take its gold, he takes its dignity. Chiefs are forced to kneel before him, their heads bowed to the dust. Sacred groves where the Mandinka once prayed to their ancestors are burned, their trees hacked down to build Soso forts. Griots who sing songs of resistance have their tongues cut out, a warning to others who might dare to remember the old ways. Forget your kings, Sumanguru declares to conquered peoples. I am your god now. For the Mandinka of Kangaba, the storm arrives in 1224. Sumanguru's army marches south, their banners emblazoned with a black eagle, a symbol of death. Kangaba's king, Sundiata's half-brother Dankaran II-man, is young and weak. He tries to negotiate, offering gold and cattle, but Sumanguru laughs. I want more than your treasure, he says. I want your submission. When Dankaran hesitates, the Soso attack. The battle is short. Kangaba's warriors fight bravely, but their spears are no match for the Soso's iron swords. Villages burn, their thatched roofs collapsing into pyres. Women and children are dragged away as captives, to be sold as slaves or forced to work in Soso fields. The royal compound is ransacked, its treasures loaded onto camels. Dankaran, fearing for his life, flees with what remains of his court, leaving Kangaba to the flames. In the chaos, Sundiata and his mother, Sagalan, are not forgotten. Sumanguru remembers the crippled prince, once a source of mockery, now a symbol of Mandinka resilience. Bring him to me, he orders. I will break him myself. But friends of the royal family smuggle Sundiata and Sagalan out of the burning kingdom, hiding them in a caravan of merchants heading east. For weeks, they travel by night, sleeping in abandoned huts, eating wild fruit to survive. We are ghosts now, Sagalan whispers to her son, her voice heavy with grief. The Mandinka are scattered like seeds in the wind. Some flee to the forests, where the Soso army dares not follow, living in small bands, hunting and gathering to stay alive. Others seek refuge in neighboring kingdoms, begging for shelter, their heads bowed in shame. A group of blacksmiths, their forges destroyed, carry their tools on their backs, wandering until they find a village that will let them work. Griots, too, go into hiding, their chorus wrapped in cloth, singing their stories in secret, lest the Soso hear and punish them. But even in exile, the Mandinka do not forget. A farmer from Kangaba, now working as a servant in a foreign village, carves the story of the attack into a wooden bowl, so his children will know who destroyed their home. A young woman, captured by Soso raiders but later escaped, teaches other refugees the old songs, tunes that tell of Mandinka courage, of kings who fought for their people. Remember, she tells them, a fire that burns bright can be put out, but embers hide in the ashes, waiting for a breath of wind. Sumanguru believes he has won. He controls the gold fields of Bambuk, the salt caravans of the Sahara, the fertile lands along the Niger. His palace in Kaniaga is filled with treasures, and kings from across the Sahel send him tribute. But he does not see the embers. He does not hear the whispers in the night, the stories that keep the Mandinka spirit alive. He does not know that a crippled prince, now a young man walking tall, is traveling from kingdom to kingdom, gathering followers, warriors, merchants, even disillusioned Soso soldiers who have grown tired of their king's cruelty. Here is a question to linger with, as the night grows deep: can fear hold a kingdom together forever? Sumanguru thinks so. But the Mandinka, in their exile, are learning a different truth, that what is taken by force can be reclaimed by hope. And hope, once planted, grows even in the darkest soil. The road east from Kangaba winds through acacia forests and grassy plains, where the wind carries the scent of distant rain. Sundiata walks it now, his step steady, his once twisted leg strong from years of travel. Beside him is his mother, Sagalan, her head held high despite the dust in her veil, and a small band of loyal followers, exiles like themselves, their hearts heavy with the memory of burned villages and stolen homes. They have wandered for years, from the fertile lands of Mima to the rocky hills of Wagadu, but Sundiata's eyes are no longer filled with the confused of a boy. They hold the steady glow of purpose. In Mima, where they first found refuge, Sundiata learned the art of governance. The king, a wise old man named Tunkara, saw something in the young exile, a quiet strength, a way of listening that made people trust him. A king does not rule with a sword alone, Tunkara told him, handing him a staff carved with symbols of unity. He rules with his ears, his heart, and the ability to turn enemies into friends. Sundiata took those words to heart. He helped mediate disputes between farmers and herders, learned the rhythms of trade that kept Mima prosperous, and even led a small force against raiders, proving his courage without seeking glory. But Mima was a haven, not a home. News reached them of Sumanguru's cruelty, how he executed chiefs who dared to question him, how he taxed villages until they starved, how he laughed when griots sang of Mandinka resistance. "He thinks we are broken," Sundiata said one night, staring into the campfire. "But a broken sword can be reforged." Sagalan placed a hand on his arm. "A sword needs a smith," she said. "And you need allies." And so, Sundiata set out to find them. He traveled to the lands of the Fulani, a pastoral people whose cattle grazed the same Sahelian plains as the Mandinka. Their chiefs had long resented Sumanguru's raids on their herds. "He takes our cows, our sons, our dignity," one chief told Sundiata, his voice tight with anger. Sundiata did not demand loyalty. He listened. "I do not ask you to fight for me," he said. "I ask you to fight for the day when your children can tend their herds without fear." The Fulani chief nodded. "A man who listens is a man worth following." Next, he journeyed to the mining regions of Bambuk, where enslaved Mandinka workers toiled in gold fields under Soso overseers. Word of his arrival spread like wildfire. "The prince walks again," they whispered. One night, a blacksmith slipped into his camp, his hands calloused from breaking rocks. "We know the land here," he said. "We can show you paths the Soso do not guard. But we need a promise: when you win, our children will be free." Sundiata clasped his hand. "Freedom is not a gift," he said. "It is the ground we stand on." Even some Soso warriors joined him. They were men who had grown sick of Sumanguru's tyranny, how he executed soldiers who hesitated, how he kept all the gold for himself, how he mocked their traditions. "He calls us brothers, but treats us like dogs," one warrior admitted, his face streaked with shame. Sundiata did not judge. "A man who sees injustice and turns away is not brave," he said. "A man who fights it, even against his own, is." As the alliance grew, so did the need for a plan, not just to win a battle, but to build a kingdom that would not repeat the mistakes of the past. Under a baobab tree, in a clearing where exiles from a dozen peoples gathered, Sundiata called for silence. "What kind of realm do we want?" he asked. The air hummed with voices. "A realm where our children are not taken as slaves," said a Bambuk miner. "A realm where chiefs listen to their people," said a Fulani elder. "A realm where griots can sing freely," said an old storyteller, her kora in her lap. "A realm where the earth is respected," said a Mandinka farmer. "Where we do not take more than we need." Sundiata nodded, and began to speak. He spoke of a charter, a set of laws that would bind them all, like the threads of a woven cloth. It would guarantee that no one, not even a king, could take a man's freedom without cause. It would protect the right of every people to practice their faith, to speak their language, to govern their villages as they saw fit. It would ensure that the land, the gold, the water, all gifts of the earth, were shared fairly. This was the seed of the Kurukan Fuga, the Charter of the Throne. It was not written on paper, for few could read, but etched into the memories of those who heard it. Griots sang it into poems, so it could be carried to every village. Chiefs memorized its words, so they could recite them in council. Even children learned fragments of it, like prayers. "This is not just a war," Sundiata told them. "It is a promise, to each other, to our ancestors, to the unborn." By 1235, the alliance was ready. Warriors from a dozen peoples gathered on the plains outside Krina, their banners fluttering in the wind, the red of the Mandinka, the blue of the Fulani, the gold of Bambuk miners. Blacksmiths forged spears and shields, their fires burning day and night. Merchants brought grain and water, enough to feed an army. Griots walked among the camps, singing of Sundiata's journey, from a crippled boy to a leader, from exile to hope. Sumanguru heard of the gathering, but he laughed. "A mob of exiles and slaves," he told his generals. "They will scatter like sheep when they see our swords." He marched his army to Krina, confident of an easy victory. But Sundiata knew something Sumanguru did not: this was not a mob. It was a family, bound not by blood, but by a shared dream. As the sun rose on the day of battle, he stood before his people, his voice steady. "Remember the charter," he said. "Remember why we fight. The question hangs in the air, soft as the morning mist: what makes a true alliance? Is it fear of a common enemy, or hope for a common future?" The exiles at Krina would say it is the latter. For they had suffered together, dreamed together, and now, at last, they would fight together. The first light of dawn seeps over the plains of Krina, painting the grass in streaks of pink and gold. The air is crisp, carrying the faint scent of sage and the distant lowing of cattle. But there is no peace here. Tens of thousands of men stand ready, their breath clouding in the cool air, their hands gripping spears and shields. On one side, the Soso army glints like a dark tide, their iron armor catching the light, their banners emblazoned with the black eagle of Sumanguru. On the other, the alliance of exiles, Mandinka farmers with axes in their hands, Fulani horsemen with lances, Bambuk miners wielding sledgehammers repurposed as weapons. And at their center stands Sundiata, his posture straight, his eyes fixed on the enemy lines. Sumanguru sits atop a white stallion, his armor inlaid with gold, a crown of iron on his head. He sneers at the ragtag alliance before him. "Look at them," he mutters to his generals. "Shepherds and slaves, thinking they can stand against us." His cavalry commanders laugh, patting their horses' necks. They have never lost a battle. Why would they start today? But Sundiata has been watching. For weeks, he and his chiefs have studied the land, the gentle slope of the plain, the dry riverbed that cuts through the center, the thicket of acacia trees on the western edge. Sumanguru loves his cavalry, he told his men the night before. He will charge first, thinking to scatter us. Let him. The battle begins with a horn blast, long and low, vibrating in the chest. Sumanguru raises his sword, and his cavalry surges forward, hooves thundering, dust billowing. The ground shakes. Some of the alliance fighters flinch, this is the terror they fled from years ago. But then, a griot begins to sing, a song of Sundiata's rise, of exiles becoming warriors, and the fear melts into resolve. "Hold!" Sundiata shouts. His voice cuts through the din. The front line of alliance fighters, Mandinka farmers and blacksmiths, kneel, planting their spears in the earth at an angle, forming a forest of iron points. Behind them, Fulani archers nock arrows, their hands steady. The Soso cavalry hits the spear wall with a crash, metal against metal, horses screaming. Some riders are impaled outright, others are thrown from their mounts. The charge falters. Sumanguru roars, urging his men forward, but the wall holds. "Break them," he bellows, drawing his own sword. Then, Sundiata gives the second signal, a sharp whistle, taken up by chiefs across the field. From the dry riverbed, hidden in the tall grass, surge the Bambuk miners, strong from years of swinging hammers, swinging sledgehammers at the legs of the Soso horses. The cavalry panics, horses rearing, riders falling. "Now!" Sundiata cries. The Fulani horsemen strike next, not head-on, but in a flanking move, circling around the Soso lines. Their lances pick off officers, sowing confusion. "Where is your god now, Sumanguru?" one Fulani chief shouts, his voice carrying. Sumanguru's face reddens with rage. He leads his personal guard in a wild charge, cutting through alliance fighters, his sword a blur. He reaches Sundiata's standard, a baobab tree carved into a staff, and swings at it, shattering the wood. "Your symbol falls," he screams. "Your people will kneel." But Sundiata is ready. He steps forward, not with a sword, but with a javelin, forged by the same blacksmiths who once toiled in Soso mines. "This is for Kangaba," he says, and hurls it. It strikes Sumanguru's arm, piercing the armor, drawing blood. The Soso king howls, clutching his wound. That is the turning point. The Soso see their king wounded, their cavalry in disarray, their lines breaking. "He is not invincible," a Mandinka warrior shouts, and the cry spreads like wildfire. Alliance fighters surge forward, not with hatred, but with purpose, for their villages, their families, their charter. By midday, the Soso army is in retreat. Some flee east, back to Kaniaga, others drop their weapons, kneeling, begging for mercy. Sumanguru tries to rally them, but his voice is lost in the chaos. As the alliance closes in, he turns his horse and gallops away, disappearing into the acacia thicket. No one ever sees him again. The plain falls silent, save for the moans of the wounded and the soft sobbing of men who have survived the unthinkable. Sundiata walks among them, his hands clasped with a Fulani chief, a Bambuk miner, a Mandinka farmer. "We did not just win a battle," he says. "We began something new." In the days that follow, the alliance makes a choice that surprises even themselves. They do not burn Soso villages or enslave their people. Instead, Sundiata sends griots to Kaniaga, carrying a message: "Live as you wish, so long as you harm no one. Pay tribute, not in gold, but in grain for the hungry. Your chiefs will rule beside ours." It is the Kurukan Fuga in action, justice, not vengeance. Kangaba is rebuilt, but not as a small kingdom. It becomes the heart of something larger, Mali. Sundiata sends governors to oversee distant lands, but they are not conquerors, they are listeners, tasked with learning local customs, resolving disputes, building wells and markets. A king who knows his people's needs, he tells them, rules without lifting a sword. The gold fields of Bambuk, once a source of suffering, become a source of prosperity. Miners are paid in grain and cloth, their children sent to learn from griots. Salt caravans, which once feared Soso raiders, now travel freely, their merchants greeted as friends. "Trade binds us tighter than iron," Sundiata says, and it is true. Markets in Timbuktu and Jen soon hum with goods from across the Sahel, carried by Mandinka, Soso, and Fulani alike. One evening, under the same baobab tree where the Kurukan Fuga was born, a griot sings of the Battle of Krina. Children gather, wide-eyed, as he describes Sundiata's javelin, the Fulani charge, the moment Sumanguru fled. "But why did we win?" a little girl asks, her braids tied with red thread. The griot smiles. "Not because we had better swords," he says, plucking his kora. "But because we fought for something, not just against. We fought for a home where no one is left behind." Sundiata, passing by, overhears. He kneels, brushing dust from the girl's cheek. "And that home," he says, "is just beginning." The sun sets, painting the sky in oranges and purples. The plains of Krina, once soaked in blood, now hum with life, farmers planting millet, children chasing goats, a blacksmith teaching a Soso boy to hammer iron. Mali is not yet an empire, but it is a promise. And promises, when tended with care, grow. The sun climbs high over the Niger River, casting a golden glow over the bustling markets of Kangaba. It is the 1240s, and Mali is no longer a fragile alliance of exiles, it is a kingdom stirring with life. Vendors shout over piles of millet and cloth, camel caravans unload salt from the Sahara, and children chase each other through crowds, their laughter mixing with the clink of gold dust being weighed on scales. At the center of it all stands Sundiata, now a man in his prime, his face lined with the wisdom of a ruler who knows that building an empire takes more than victory in battle, it takes patience, creativity, and a willingness to listen. Sundiata's first task is to weave the scattered territories of Mali into a single tapestry. He does not rule like Sumanguru, with iron and fear. Instead, he builds a system that honors the Kurukan Fuga, the charter forged under the baobab tree. The kingdom is divided into provinces, each governed by a farba, a trusted chief who knows the local customs, speaks the language, and understands the needs of the people. These Farba are not conquerors, they are bridge builders. A Fulani Farba in the north might oversee cattle trade, while a Mandinka Farba in the south manages rice fields. A man who rules a river like he rules a desert will drown, Sundiata tells them. Learn the land, and the land will sustain you. To keep these Farba accountable, Sundiata creates a network of eyes and ears, royal messengers who travel the kingdom on fast horses, reporting back on how provinces are governed. They do not spy to punish, but to help. If a village struggles with drought, the messengers carry word to Kangaba, and grain is sent from surplus regions. If a Farba grows too greedy, Sundiata does not send soldiers, he sends a griot, who sings of the Kurukan Fuga's promise of fairness, reminding the chief of his duty. A kingdom is like a body, Sundiata says. If one part aches, the whole suffers. Taxes, too, are a tool of unity, not oppression. Sundiata discards Sumanguru's cruel tributes, replacing them with a system that asks each region to give what it can spare. Farmers in the Niger Valley pay in millet and rice, enough to feed the royal court and store for lean years. Miners in Bambuk contribute a small portion of their gold, not enough to impoverish them, but enough to fund roads and markets. Herders in the Sahel give a single cow from every 100, which are shared among the hungry. Even merchants pay their share, a handful of salt from Saharan caravans, a bolt of cloth from traders returning from the coast. Taxes are not theft, Sundiata tells a skeptical chief. They are how we build something greater than ourselves. But it is trade that truly binds Mali together, specifically, the ancient dance between gold and salt. The Sahara holds vast salt flats, where workers carve slabs of the mineral that is worth its weight in gold to farmers in the south, who need it to preserve food and keep their livestock healthy. The forests of Bambuk and Beret, meanwhile, yield gold dust and nuggets, which northern merchants crave to buy silks, spices, and tools from across the Mediterranean. For centuries, this trade flowed through Ouagadougou, but now Mali controls the crossroads. Sundiata does not hoard this wealth, he connects it. He orders wells dug along the caravan routes, so traders and their camels never go thirsty. He builds rest houses in market towns, where travelers can sleep safely, their goods guarded by royal soldiers. Most importantly, he standardizes weights and measures. A moro of gold in Timbuktu is the same as a moro in Jen, so merchants never argue over fairness. Trust makes trade grow, he says, and he is right. Caravans that once feared raiders now travel in safety, their numbers swelling. A merchant from Fez might arrive with salt, trade it for gold in Kangaba, then sail down the Niger to sell that gold for ivory, all under Mali's protection. The gold-salt trade becomes the kingdom's lifeblood, but Sundiata knows better than to rely on two resources. He encourages other trades, too. Weavers in Jen create cloth dyed with indigo from the forests, selling it as far as North Africa. Blacksmiths in Kangaba forge tools that make farming easier, increasing harvests. Fishermen on the Niger sell their catch to inland villages, where fish is a luxury. Even griots become part of the economy, traveling with caravans to sing for merchants, who pay them in salt or small nuggets of gold. Religion, too, becomes a thread in this economic tapestry. Muslim merchants from the north settle in Timbuktu, building mosques and teaching locals to read and write in Arabic, the language of trade. Sundiata does not force anyone to convert, but he welcomes these scholars. A man who can read a contract is less likely to be cheated, he says. Soon, Timbuktu's markets hum with Arabic as well as Mandinka, Fulani, and Songhai. A Muslim merchant might negotiate with a Mandinka farmer using a griot as translator, their differences fading in the face of a good deal. One afternoon, Sundiata visits a market in Timbuktu, walking incognito among the crowds. He watches a Fulani herder trade a cow for salt from Tagaza, then use the leftover salt to buy a bolt of gen cloth. He listens to a group of miners arguing over the price of gold dust, settling their dispute by quoting the Kurukan Fuga, fair measure, fair share. He smiles, for this is what he dreamed of during his years in exile, a kingdom where people from a dozen backgrounds do more than coexist, they need each other. Here is a question to ponder, as the market fades into evening: what makes an empire last? Is it gold, or armies, or something simpler? Sundiata would say it is connection, roads that link villages, taxes that feed the hungry, trade that turns strangers into partners. Mali's strength is not in its palaces or its weapons, but in the invisible threads that bind its people together. As the sun sets, caravans head north with gold, south with salt, east with stories. And in Kangaba, Sundiata sits with his Farba, planning new wells, new markets, new ways to make Mali not just rich, but resilient. The empire is young, but its roots run deep, watered by wisdom, nourished by trade, and strengthened by the belief that everyone, from the lowliest farmer to the highest chief, has a place in its story. The Niger River flows like a silver thread through the heart of West Africa, its waters carrying more than fish and silt, they carry the dreams of a kingdom growing beyond its borders. By the mid-13th century, Mali is no longer confined to Kangaba and the lands around it. Like the river, it has spread, gently but steadily, wrapping around cities, trade routes, and fertile valleys until its name is spoken with respect from the Sahara's edge to the forests of the south. This is not conquest by sword alone, but conquest by connection, binding cities like Timbuktu and Gen to Mali's heart through trade, trust, and the quiet power of shared prosperity. Let us first journey to Timbuktu, a city where the desert meets the river. When Mali's traders first arrived, it was a humble settlement, a stopover for caravans crossing the Sahara. But its location is a gift. Here, the Niger bends closest to the desert, making it the perfect meeting point for merchants from the north, carrying salt, silk, and spices, and the south, carrying gold, ivory, and cloth. Sundiata saw its potential at once. A city where the desert and river shake hands, he told his Farba, will be the crossroads of the world. Mali did not seize Timbuktu by force. Instead, Sundiata sent griots and merchants to meet with its leaders, offering a deal: join Mali, and your traders will travel safely, your markets will thrive, your scholars will be honored. The people of Timbuktu, tired of raids by nomadic tribes and eager for stability, agreed. Soon, Mali's soldiers patrolled the roads to the city, chasing off bandits. Wells were dug along the caravan routes, so camels never went thirsty. A tax house was built, not to squeeze the people, but to ensure fair trade, a small fee on each salt slab, a pinch of gold dust from each miner, all used to repair boats and feed the poor. Timbuktu flourished. Its markets burst with color, Berber merchants haggling over dates, Mandinka women selling pottery, Arab scholars trading books. The city's mosques, once simple mud structures, were expanded with Mali's gold, their minarets rising like fingers pointing to the sky. By the 1260s, it was more than a trading post, it was a center of learning. Scholars from Cairo and Fez came to teach, their students copying manuscripts in libraries that grew with each caravan. Salt comes from the north, gold from the south, a griot sang, but wisdom? Wisdom comes to Timbuktu. Farther south, where the Niger spreads into a network of creeks and marshes, lies Jen. This city is the breadbasket of Mali, its fertile fields yielding more rice than any other place in the Sahel. Its people are master farmers, using the river's annual floods to irrigate their crops, and master weavers, turning local cotton into cloth so fine it is traded as far as Morocco. When Mali's emissaries arrived, Jen's leaders were cautious. They had thrived on their own for centuries, trading rice and cloth with whoever offered the best price. But Mali offered something no other kingdom could: reliability. "Sell to us, and you will always be paid," Sundiata's messengers promised. "Farm for us, and your harvests will be protected from raiders." Jen joined, and soon its rice filled Mali's granaries, ensuring no village went hungry during droughts. Its weavers, now part of a vast network, received cotton from the south and indigo from the forests, creating cloths dyed in deep blues and reds that became symbols of Mali's wealth. A merchant in Timbuktu might wear a Jen robe while trading with a Saharan nomad, proof that Mali's cities were stitched together, not just by roads, but by thread and grain. To connect these far-flung cities, Mali turned to two great highways, the Niger River and the Trans-Saharan trails. The river, once a barrier, became a lifeline. Mali's shipbuilders, borrowing techniques from Jen's fishermen and Arab traders, crafted long, narrow boats called pirogues, capable of carrying tons of rice, cloth, or gold. These boats glide downriver with the current, carried by the Niger's flow, and are pulled back upriver by teams of strong men, their songs echoing across the water as they work. A load of Jen rice might reach Timbuktu in days, a journey that once took weeks by land. On land, Mali's network of roads grew denser, paved with packed earth and marked by stone pillars that told travelers how far they were from the next village. Caravans, once small and fearful, now numbered in the hundreds, camels laden with salt from Tagaza, donkeys carrying gold from Bambuk, horses bearing royal messengers with sealed letters. At every stop, there is a caravanserai, a walled compound with stables, wells, and rooms for merchants, where travelers can rest, trade stories, and repair their goods. "A road without a rest house is a song without a chorus," a Mali proverb says, and Mali's roads sang with the voices of a dozen peoples. This trade did more than make Mali rich, it made it known. Arab chroniclers in Cairo wrote of a kingdom where gold flows like water, of cities where scholars and merchants sit side by side, arguing over poetry and prices. European mapmakers, hearing tales from traders, began drawing Mali on their maps, marking it with a golden crown. Even kings in distant lands sent emissaries, bearing gifts and curious questions. "How do you rule so many peoples without war?" they asked. The answer, as always, lay in Mali's way of governance. When a new city joined, its leaders kept their power to manage local affairs. A Jen farmer still followed his village's traditions for planting rice, a Timbuktu scholar still taught Islamic law as he saw fit. Mali's Farba did not interfere, they facilitated. If Jen needed more tools to build better boats, Mali's blacksmith sent them. If Timbuktu's scholars needed paper, Mali's merchants traded for it with North African traders. "We do not change the song," Sundiata once said. "We add more voices to the chorus." By the end of the 13th century, Mali's reach is staggering. It stretches from the Atlantic coast in the west to the Niger's bend in the east, from the Sahara's edge in the north to the forest fringes in the south. Its cities, Kangaba, Timbuktu, Jen, and soon Gao, are like beads on a string, each shining with its own light but part of a single necklace. A farmer in Jen, a merchant in Timbuktu, a herder in the Sahel, they have never met, but they are bound by the rice they eat, the cloth they wear, the stories the griots sing. Here is a question to drift with, as the river carries the day into night: what makes a kingdom great? Is it how many miles it covers, or how many people thrive within its borders? Mali would say the latter. For in its cities, in its markets, in the laughter of children chasing each other along the Niger's banks, we see not just an empire of land, but an empire of life. And as the sun sets over Timbuktu's minarets, casting long shadows over the desert, a griot sits by the river, plucking his kora. The river does not rush, he sings. It flows, and in flowing, it turns deserts into gardens. So too does Mali flow, steadily, surely, turning a collection of cities into something greater than the sum of their parts. The year is 1312, and the Niger River glimmers under the West African sun like a ribbon of liquid gold. From the bustling markets of Timbuktu to the fertile fields of Jen, from the gold mines of Bambuk to the salt flats of Tagaza, Mali hums with a vitality that feels almost tangible. This is no longer a young kingdom finding its feet, it is a mature empire, its roots deep in the soil of good governance, its branches reaching toward the sky of unprecedented prosperity. When the news spreads that a new ruler, Mansa Musa, is to ascend the throne, no one yet knows that he will carry Mali's glory to the far corners of the known world. But all can sense that something extraordinary is about to unfold, built on the sturdy foundations of what came before. Let us walk through the streets of Timbuktu in these final years before Musa's reign, and feel the pulse of this empire. The city has grown into a marvel, its mud brick houses stretch far beyond the old walls, their flat roofs dotted with drying millet and laundry fluttering in the breeze. The central market is a riot of color and sound. Berber merchants in blue robes barter salt slabs for gold dust, Mandinka women arrange piles of indigo-dyed cloth, their laughter mixing with the clatter of copper pots. Arab scholars in white turbans discuss poetry with griots plucking chorus. A boy runs through the crowd, shouting that a caravan from Fez has arrived, bringing silk and spices, and news of the wider world. Timbuktu's libraries, once modest collections of manuscripts, now burst with knowledge. Scholars copy texts on astronomy, medicine, and law, their quills scratching against paper made from local reeds. The great mosque of Jingareber, its wooden beams jutting like ribs from thick mud walls, hosts lectures where hundreds gather to hear debates about the Quran. This is not just a city of trade, a visiting scholar writes to his friend in Cairo, but a city of thought. Even the merchants quote Aristotle. Downriver in Jen, the air smells of wet earth and rice paddies. The city's annual flood festival is in full swing, farmers dance to honor the Niger, which nourishes their fields, priests make offerings to the river spirit, even the local Farba joins in, his robes tucked up to his knees as he wades through the shallow water. Jen's weavers are busy too, their looms clacking day and night. They weave cotton grown in Mali's southern fields with threads dyed in hues that mimic the desert sunset, crimson, gold, violet. These cloths are not just sold in Mali, they are traded in Morocco, in Egypt, even as far as the markets of Constantinople. A robe from Jen is a badge of honor, a merchant boasts, running his fingers over the fine fabric. In the gold fields of Bambuk, the work is hard but hopeful. Miners dig into the red earth, their tools clinking against rock, their foreheads glistening with sweat. Unlike the harsh days of Soso rule, they are paid in grain, cloth, and a share of the gold they find. A miner might send a small nugget home to his wife, who trades it for a new cooking pot or a necklace for their daughter. The gold belongs to all of us, they say, repeating a phrase from the Kurukan Fuga. And it is true, Mali's wealth does not sit idle in royal vaults. It builds wells, funds schools, and feeds the hungry during droughts. The trade networks that bind these far-flung corners of the empire are now works of art. Caravans of 500 camels or more traverse the Sahara, guided by Tuareg nomads who know every dune and water hole. They carry Mali's gold to cities like Sijil Massa in Morocco, where it is minted into coins that circulate across the Mediterranean. In return, they bring back not just goods, but ideas, new ways to build ships, improved methods of irrigation, even stories of how kings rule in distant lands. "We are not isolated," a griot sings in Kangaba. "The desert is a bridge, not a wall." Kangaba itself, once a humble village, has grown into a royal capital. The palace complex, built from sun-dried bricks and topped with wooden roofs, sprawls across a hillside. Its audience hall, where the current Mansa holds court, is decorated with murals depicting Sundiata's victory at Krina and the signing of the Kurukan Fuga. Chiefs from across the empire gather here, bringing tribute and news. "How does Mali stay strong?" a young scribe asks an elder. The elder points to the murals, "Not by swords alone. By remembering who we are, and who we promise to be." Religion, as ever, is a unifying thread. Most Malians still honor their traditional spirits, the baobab tree, the ancestors, the Niger, but Islam has taken root too, not as a replacement, but as an addition. A farmer might pray to Allah for rain in the morning and leave an offering for the earth spirit in the afternoon. Mansa Abu Bakr II, Musa's predecessor, is a devout Muslim who funds new mosques, but he also attends the annual harvest festival, showing that faiths can walk hand in hand. God is too big to be confined to one way of worship, he tells his advisors. By 1312, when Abu Bakr II set sail with a fleet of ships to explore the Western Ocean, never to return, Mali is primed for greatness. Its economy is diversified, gold, yes, but also agriculture, textiles, and trade. Its culture is vibrant, blending local traditions with global ideas. Its people, from farmers to scholars, feel a sense of belonging to something larger than themselves. This is the legacy Mansa Musa inherits, not just a throne, but a kingdom that has learned to grow without losing its soul. Here is a question to ponder as the day fades: what makes a kingdom ready for greatness? It is not just wealth or size. It is the quiet work of generations, building roads, nurturing scholars, planting seeds of trust. Mali, in 1312, is ready. It has the resources, the wisdom, and the spirit to step onto the world stage. And soon, under Mansa Musa, it will. The year is 1324, and the air along the trans-Saharan route shimmers with anticipation. A caravan unlike any the desert has ever seen stretches as far as the eye can see, tens of thousands of people moving in a slow, glittering river. At its center rides a man draped in a robe of deep blue silk, his turban woven with threads of gold, Mansa Musa, ruler of Mali, setting out on a journey that will make his name echo across continents. This is no ordinary pilgrimage to Mecca. It is a display of wealth, faith, and power that will rewrite how the world sees Africa. Months of preparation have gone into this expedition. Mansa Musa has spared no detail. He travels with 60,000 people, soldiers in polished armor, scholars carrying leather-bound manuscripts, merchants with samples of Mali's finest cloth, and 12,000 slaves, each carrying a staff topped with a gold knob. There are 80 camels, each laden with 300 pounds of gold dust, enough to make kings gasp and merchants rub their hands in greed. This is not just a journey of the soul, Musa tells his advisors. It is a journey to show the world who we are. The caravan moves at a steady pace, averaging 15 miles a day. Each evening, they set up a camp that resembles a mobile city, tents of silk for the royal party, leather shelters for the soldiers, cooking fires where chefs prepare meals of rice, lamb, and dates. Water carriers fan out to nearby oases, filling leather bags to quench the thirst of people and animals alike. At night, griots sing under the stars, their chorus weaving tales of Mali's glory, of Sundiata's victory, of Timbuktu's libraries, of the gold that flows like rivers. As they cross into North Africa, word spreads like wildfire. A king from the south comes, carrying mountains of gold. Traders abandon their caravans to catch a glimpse, rulers send emissaries to offer hospitality, hoping for a share of the wealth. In Cairo, the Mamluk Sultan, Al-Nasir Muhammad, is skeptical. What can a king from the African interior offer, he scoffs. But when Musa's caravan reaches the city, even the Sultan is stunned. Cairo in 1324 is one of the greatest cities in the world, a hub of trade where merchants from Venice, Baghdad, and Constantinople rub shoulders. But nothing has prepared its people for Mali's king. Musa rides into the city on a white horse, his retinue dressed in fabrics that make Egyptian silks look plain. He gifts the Sultan 50,000 gold dinars on the spot, and that is just the beginning. Over the next 3 months, he showers gold on everyone. Scholars receive enough to build schools, shopkeepers find their stores flooded with customers as Musa's entourage buys silk, spices, and jewelry. Even beggars in the streets go home with gold coins clinking in their pockets. The effect is catastrophic, for Cairo's economy, at least. So much gold floods the market that its value plummets. Prices for food, cloth, and land soar. A loaf of bread that cost 1 dirham now costs 5, a house that sold for 100 dinars now demands 500. The king of Mali has broken our currency, a merchant complains, though his eyes shine with greed. The inflation lasts for a decade, a testament to just how much wealth Musa carries. But Musa is more than a walking treasury. He meets with scholars at Al-Azhar University, listening as they debate Islamic law and philosophy. He hires the best minds, architects, mathematicians, poets, to return with him to Mali. Knowledge is a treasure greater than gold, he says, and he means it. When he leaves Cairo, he leaves behind not just gold, but a new image of Africa, not a land of savages, but a kingdom of learning and plenty. From Cairo, the caravan moves to Mecca, where Musa performs the Hajj with great piety. He prays at the Kaaba, donates gold to repair the mosque, and hosts a feast for thousands of fellow pilgrims. Here, he meets rulers from across the Islamic world, from Persia to Yemen, who are dazzled by his generosity and his tales of Mali. "Your kingdom must be a paradise," one emir says. Musa smiles. "It is a work of God," he replies, "and of hard work." On the return journey, Musa takes a different route, through the kingdom of Bornu and across the Sahel. Everywhere he goes, he leaves a trail of gifts and promises. He funds a mosque in every major city he passes, and signs trade agreements that will send Mali's gold to new markets. By the time he reaches Timbuktu in 1326, 2 years after he left, the world has been forever changed. European mapmakers, hearing tales of this African king, drenched in gold, redraw their maps. The 1375 Catalan Atlas, one of the most famous maps of the Middle Ages, shows Mansa Musa sitting on a throne, holding a gold nugget in one hand and a scepter in the other, an image that would shape European ideas of Africa for centuries. Arab chroniclers write lengthy accounts of his journey, describing Mali as a land where gold is more common than stone. Even in distant China, merchants whisper of a golden kingdom far to the west. Back in Mali, Musa puts his new knowledge to use. He commissions the architect al-Sahili, whom he met in Cairo, to rebuild Timbuktu's mosques and palaces. The result is the Djinguereber Mosque, with its towering minaret and wooden beams that seem to defy gravity, a masterpiece of Sudano-Sahelian architecture. He expands the library at Sankore University, sending scholars to buy manuscripts from Cairo and Baghdad. Timbuktu becomes not just a trading post, but a global center of learning, where students study astronomy, medicine, and literature. Why did this pilgrimage matter so much? It was more than a display of wealth. It was a declaration: Africa had empires too, empires that could rival those of Europe and the Middle East in prosperity, culture, and wisdom. Musa turned Mali from a regional power into a name known in every corner of the Old World. As the sun sets over Timbuktu, and the call to prayer echoes from the Djinguereber Mosque, a griot plucks his kora and sings of Musa's journey. Gold fades, he croons, but stories last. And the story of Mali, our story, will be told for 1,000 years. The sun climbs high over the Niger River, casting its light on a city that shimmers like a jewel in the Sahel. It is the mid-14th century, and Timbuktu is not merely a city, it is a phenomenon. From the bustling markets of its commercial quarter to the quiet cloisters of its mosques, from the workshops of its artisans to the libraries overflowing with manuscripts, every corner hums with the energy of a civilization at its peak. This is the golden age of Timbuktu, a time when knowledge, trade, and art converged to make it one of the most extraordinary cities of the medieval world, a beacon that draws seekers from across Africa, the Middle East, and beyond. Let us begin in the heart of Timbuktu's intellectual life, the Sankore University. It is not a single building, but a cluster of mosques, lecture halls, and libraries spread across the city, where 25,000 students and scholars live and work. Imagine walking through its courtyards at dawn. The air is cool, and the sound of recitation fills the air as students memorize verses from the Quran, lines from Aristotle, or equations from ancient Greek mathematicians. In one corner, a scholar from Fez debates a Mandinka jurist about Islamic law. In another, a physician from Cairo teaches students how to diagnose malaria using herbs from the Niger Delta. The libraries of Sankore are treasure troves. Manuscripts line the shelves, their pages made from local papyrus or imported paper, their covers bound in leather embossed with gold. There are texts on astronomy, explaining how to calculate the positions of the stars to guide caravans across the desert, medical treatises that describe cures for everything from snake bites to fevers, works of poetry that blend Arabic meters with African rhythms, and histories that chronicle the rise of Mali, written by griots who learn to read and write to preserve their stories more permanently. A manuscript is a candle, one librarian says, and together, they light up the world. These manuscripts are not locked away, they are traded, copied, and debated. Merchants from North Africa will pay a year's wages for a rare text on philosophy, rulers from across West Africa send scribes to copy medical manuals, even ordinary citizens, if they can read, borrow stories of love and adventure to share with their families. The demand for books is so great that Timbuktu's scribes form guilds, their workshops producing thousands of manuscripts each year. Gold fades, a scribe carves into his desk, but words are eternal. Timbuktu's architecture, too, tells the story of its golden age. The Djinguereber Mosque, rebuilt by Mansa Musa's architect al-Sahili, rises from the city like a mountain of mud and faith. Its minaret, 98 feet tall, towers over the rooftops, its wooden beams, imported from distant forests, jutting out like ribs to support the thick walls. Inside, The prayer hall is cool and quiet, its mihrab pointing toward Mecca, its walls decorated with verses from the Quran painted in vibrant blues and greens. Nearby, the Sidi Yahya Mosque and the Sankor Mosque form a triangle of piety, their courtyards filled with worshippers at dawn and dusk. But Timbuktu's buildings are more than places of worship, they are works of engineering. The mosque's walls are built with banco, a mixture of mud, straw, and water, which hardens in the sun to become as strong as stone. Each year, during the rainy season, the entire city turns out to repair the walls, adding a new layer of banco to protect against the rains. "We build our city like we build our lives," a mason says, smoothing the mud with his trowel. With care, and together. The commercial quarter, meanwhile, is a riot of color and sound. Traders from across the known world gather here, Berbers in blue robes barter salt from Tagaza, Arabs in white turbans sell silk from Damascus, Mandinka merchants display gold dust measured out on brass scales, Songhai fishermen offer baskets of dried fish from the Niger. The air smells of spices, cinnamon from Ceylon, pepper from India, cloves from the East Indies, brought by camel caravans that take months to cross the desert. One merchant, a man from Venice named Antonio, writes home to his brother, "This city is a marvel. They trade gold like it is sand, and their markets have goods I have never seen, cloth dyed the color of the sky, pottery painted with stories, even books that talk of stars and healing." He is particularly amazed by the city's order. There are judges here, both Muslim and traditional, who settle disputes fairly. A thief is punished, but an honest man is respected, no matter where he comes from. Daily life in Timbuktu reflects its cosmopolitan spirit. A typical family might include a father who trades salt, a mother who weaves cloth dyed with indigo, a son who studies at Sankor, and a daughter who helps her grandmother sell millet cakes in the market. They speak Mandinka at home, but the son learns Arabic at school, and the father picks up phrases of Berber and Songhai to bargain with traders. At night, they might gather to listen to a griot sing of Sundiata, or to a scholar read from a manuscript about the history of Baghdad. Religion, as ever, is a tapestry of faiths. Most people are Muslim, but they blend their faith with traditional beliefs. A merchant might say a Muslim prayer before setting out on a journey, then leave an offering of millet beer for the river spirit to calm the waters. The city's judges, called qadis, apply Islamic law to commercial disputes, but they also respect local customs when it comes to family matters. God is one, a qadi tells a visitor, but he speaks to us in many languages. By the late 14th century, Timbuktu's fame has spread far and wide. A traveler from Persia writes, "Timbuktu is the meeting point of all wisdom. Here, the scholars are as wealthy as kings, and the kings are as eager to learn as students." A Chinese diplomat, visiting Egypt, hears tales of a city in the far west where gold flows and books outnumber grains of sand. Even in Europe, where knowledge of Africa is scarce, mapmakers draw Timbuktu as a golden city, marked with a star to show its importance. What makes Timbuktu's golden age so remarkable? It is not just its wealth, though there is plenty of that. It is the way knowledge, trade, and faith come together to create something greater than the sum of their parts. In Timbuktu, a gold merchant might fund a library, a scholar might advise a king on trade policy, and a mason might carve verses from the Quran into a mosque wall, all contributing to a civilization that values both material and spiritual riches. As the sun sets over the Niger, casting Timbuktu's minarets in silhouette, a griot sits on the banks of the river, plucking his kora. "This city," he sings, "is not made of stone and gold alone. It is made of the dreams of those who came here, seekers, traders, scholars, believers." And dreams, once shared, never die. The year 1337 dawns over Mali with a quiet heaviness, like the stillness before a storm. In Timbuktu, the call to prayer echoes as always, but there is a tremor in the air, a sense that something fundamental has shifted. Mansa Musa, the king who turned Mali into a byword for wealth and wisdom, has died. For decades, his name had been a shield, his vision a compass. Now, the empire he built stands at a crossroads, its future as uncertain as the path of a desert caravan caught in a sandstorm. At first, the transition seems smooth. Musa's son, Magan I, takes the throne. He is a pious man, learned in the Quran, and for a time, people breathe easy. The apple does not fall far from the tree, griots sing, and merchants continue to trade, scholars to study, farmers to plant. But Magan lacks his father's strength of will, his ability to balance the competing demands of Mali's vast territories. He relies too much on advisors, too little on his own judgment. And when challenges come, he hesitates. The first cracks appear in the provinces. Governors who once deferred to the Mansa's authority begin to test their limits. In Gao, a city with a long history of independence, the local Farba stops sending full tribute to Kangaba. We need the gold to defend ourselves from raiders, he argues, but no one believes him. In the west, near the Atlantic coast, a chief refuses to enforce new trade laws, claiming they harm his people's fishing industry. Musa would have listened, he tells his followers, and they nod, for it is true. Magan's response? Silence, or half measures. He sends messengers to scold the Farba of Gao, but no soldiers. He revises the trade laws, but backs down when other chiefs protest. A king who bends too easily breaks, an old warrior warns, but Magan does not listen. Slowly, the idea takes root, the central government is weak. And where weakness is perceived, ambition grows. By 1341, when Magan dies unexpectedly, the empire is ripe for conflict. His son, Suleiman, is still a boy, and a power struggle erupts. Musa's brothers, his nephews, even distant cousins, all claim the throne. I am the true heir, each declares, rallying supporters with promises of gold, of lower taxes, of greater autonomy for their regions. The royal court in Kangaba becomes a nest of intrigue, where poison is as common as diplomacy, and alliances shift with the wind. The provinces take sides. The Farba of Gao backs one claimant, hoping to secure his city's independence. The merchants of Timbuktu support another, fearing chaos will disrupt trade. The Fulani herders in the north align with a third, drawn by his promises to protect their grazing lands. Mali, once a tapestry, begins to fray into separate threads. Worst of all, the trade networks that bind the empire start to unravel. Caravans from the Sahara are attacked by bandits who no longer fear royal retribution. River traders avoid certain stretches of the Niger, where local chiefs demand bribes to let them pass. Gold from Bambuk still flows, but less of it reaches Kangaba, more is kept by provincial governors to fund their own armies. Musa's gold bought loyalty, a merchant laments. Now, it buys only betrayal. Religious tensions, once kept in check by Musa's inclusive policies, resurface. Some claimants appeal to Muslim scholars, promising to enforce stricter Islamic law. Others court traditional priests, vowing to restore the old ways. In Timbuktu, a fight breaks out between students at Sankore University, one group shouting for pure Islam, another for Mali's way. The library, once a symbol of unity, becomes a battlefield of ideas. Ordinary people feel the strain. A farmer in Jen finds his taxes rising, even as the grain he sells fetches less in markets disrupted by conflict. A weaver in Timbuktu cannot get indigo from the south, because the roads are unsafe. A camel driver in the Sahara abandons his trade, saying it is no longer worth the risk. "We used to be one people," he says, staring at the horizon. "Now, we are just pieces." By the 1350s, the empire is divided in all but name. Suleiman, now a young man, rules a rump state centered on Kangaba, while powerful warlords control Gao, Timbuktu, and the gold fields. They still call themselves servants of the Mansa, but it is a lie. They mint their own coins, make their own treaties, wage war on each other without consulting the capital. A visiting Arab scholar writes home in 1352, Mali is a shadow of its former self. The gold still exists, but the unity is gone. The kings bicker, the governors rebel, and the people wonder if the good times will ever return. He is right. The cracks have spread too far. What began as hesitation, as ambition, as misunderstanding, has become a chasm. Here is a question to weigh in the quiet of the night: can an empire survive the loss of its soul? Mali was more than gold and cities and trade routes. It was an idea that diverse peoples could thrive together, bound by respect and shared prosperity. When that idea fades, what is left? As the 14th century draws to a close, Mali's sun dips lower. The storm that began with a whisper is now a howl. And on the horizon, a new power stirs, the Songhai, once vassals, now waiting to claim what Mali can no longer hold. The sun sets over the Niger River, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, but its light no longer reaches as far as it once did. By the early 15th century, Mali's golden age is a memory, a story told by griots to wide-eyed children, a tale of kings who carried gold like sand and cities where books outnumbered stars. The empire, once a vast tapestry stretching from desert to forest, has shrunk to a fraction of its size, its borders eaten away by rebellious chiefs, nomadic raiders, and a new power rising in the east, the Songhai. The Songhai, once loyal vassals of Mali, have grown bold under their king, Sunni Ali. He is a warrior with a vision, and he sees Mali's weakness as his opportunity. In 1468, his armies march on Timbuktu, that jewel of learning and trade. The city's defenders fight bravely, but they are outnumbered, their walls crumbling under Songhai siege engines. When the gates fall, Sunni Ali does not burn the libraries or silence the scholars, he claims them as his own. Timbuktu belongs to the strongest, he declares, but in his heart, he knows its true power lies not in stone, but in the knowledge it holds. One by one, Mali's great cities fall. Jen, the breadbasket, surrenders in 1473, its farmers choosing peace over destruction. Gao, long a trouble spot for Mali, welcomes the Songhai as liberators. By 1480, only the core of Mali, Kangaba and a few surrounding villages, remains in the hands of its last rulers. They are proud men, descendants of Sundiata, but they rule over a kingdom that is little more than a village with a crown. The end comes quietly, not with a battle, but with a whimper. In 1500, the last Mansa of Mali dies without an heir. His chiefs gather to mourn, then scatter to their villages, each going their own way. There is no grand funeral, no final stand, just the slow, inevitable fate of a kingdom that had once dazzled the world. But here is the secret no conqueror can ever grasp: empires die, but their souls live on. In Timbuktu, now under Songhai rule, the scholars at Sankore continue to study, copy, and debate. The manuscripts Musa brought from Cairo are still there, their pages turned by new hands. A Songhai student reads a treatise on astronomy written by a Mandinka scholar, and in that moment, Mali lives on. The Kurukan Fuga, that charter of fairness and unity, never fades. Griots sing its words at village gatherings, teaching children that a kingdom is like a calabash, strongest when held together. Chiefs in West Africa still resolve disputes using its principles: listen first, judge fairly, protect the weak. Even the Songhai, for all their conquests, adopt parts of it, for they recognize wisdom when they hear it. Mandinka culture spreads like ripples in a pond. Their language becomes a trade tongue across West Africa, spoken by merchants from Senegal to Nigeria. Their music, the Kora's pluck, the griot song, inspires new styles, from the drumming of the wolof to the storytelling of the fula. A farmer in modern-day Mali plants his millet using techniques taught by Sundiata's people, a weaver in Guinea dyes cloth with indigo, following recipes from Gen's golden age. The gold that once made Mali famous still flows, but its true legacy is not in metal. It is in the idea that Africa could produce empires, empires of learning, of trade, of dignity. When European explorers reach West Africa in the 15th century, they expect to find savages. Instead, they find cities with mosques and libraries, kings who negotiate treaties, merchants who speak multiple languages. These are not barbarians, one explorer writes in his journal, shocked. They are a nation with a history as rich as our own. Mali's shadow stretches into the modern world. In 1960, when Mali gains independence from France, its leaders invoke Sundiata's name, promising to build a nation where all people are equal, just as the Kurukan Fuga decreed. The manuscripts of Timbuktu, hidden for centuries, are rediscovered in the 20th century, revealing a sophisticated African intellectual tradition that scholars had long ignored. Today, they are studied in universities worldwide, proof that Africa's story is not just one of colonization, but of great civilizations that rose, fell, and left their mark. As for the griots, they still sing. By campfires in Mali, in cities across the diaspora, they pluck their chorus and tell of Sundiata, the crippled boy who became a king, of Musa, who turned gold into wisdom, of Timbuktu, where the desert met the river and magic happened. Stories are like seeds, a griot tells a child, as the fire dies down. You bury them, and they grow, even when you forget you planted them. So let us close this story with a truth as old as the Niger: empires may fall, but the good they do, the knowledge they preserve, the unity they foster, the dreams they plant, lives forever. Mali is gone, but its light still shines, in the words of its scholars, the songs of its people, and the quiet courage of those who believe that a better world is possible. The night is deep now, and the river murmurs softly. Sleep, and let your dreams be filled with golden cities, with stories that never end, with the knowledge that even the greatest empires live on, in us. Good night, and may your dreams be as rich as Mali's legacy.